Hello, good evening, and once again, welcome to another edition of Spiritism, a closer look, evolution. This is our program number 20. Yeah, 20 already. This is transmitted via Kardec Radio and every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So just let your loved ones know, let everybody know that we are always here discussing about evolution under the Spiritist point of view. And as always, we're going to start with last week's Spirit Trivia. All right, that's our trivia for the week. You can always go to evolution.spirittrivia.com. Every week we upload a question and a few answers. It's a multiple choice. So you can go to the link and cast your answer. And again, we do not collect any information from you. No names, no email addresses, no IP addresses, nothing like this. Okay? It's totally anonymous. So what you see here is the question for last week. And the question was, how does Spiritism explain the missing links in evolution? We know there are what science and the experts, I would say, call these missing links in evolution. So is there an explanation from the Spiritist point of view to those things? So we got 4 possible answers in there. Let's go through them and discuss a little bit. Number 1, first option. The materialistic paradigm does not consider the spiritual evolution. Possible, very possible. That's a true statement. Number 2, or letter B, lack of scientific research. No, that's not how Spiritism explains the missing link, by blaming on science that they don't do research enough. That's not true. Letter C, absence of religious connections on those studying the subject. It doesn't really have anything to do with that. You could be, a researcher. You could get information without being absolutely religious to the point that you're totally devoted to a particular belief system. Last option, the missing links are self-explanatory. It makes no sense at all. So we are back here to answer A, the first answer. So if you cast your vote on A, you got it right. The materialistic paradigm does not consider the spiritual evolution, because anything spiritual is outside the materialistic paradigm. And because part of evolution takes place outside the materialistic paradigm, they don't see it. So for them, there is this idea of a missing link. This is explained well. Actually, we discussed this a little bit last week. This is well stated in the book Evolution in Two Worlds by Spirit Andre Luiz. Great book, by the way. Okay, so tonight we're going to start something on next chapter, which, by the way, the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to be discussing intellectual progress and moral progress. Okay, both of them. So it might take us about maybe 3 weeks to get it done. So tonight we're going to start with intellectual progress. So let's take a look at a few things. What we want to do here is look at history of humanity. We're going to just bring facts, okay, without any judgment, without anything. We're just going to list facts from the history of humanity. We're going to start way back before the year 3500 BC, okay? So before those days, we didn't even have wheel and fire, which are great inventions, great accomplishments within intellectual progress. And that's how we start. That would be our first milestone. And we're going to go through a chronological enumeration of events and discoveries and stuff like that. So after this, we had in the year or around the year 3000 BC, writing. Okay, so writing comes in place. And of course, that makes a huge impact in humanity as a general. The next thing is 1600 BC. Abraham comes on board, and Abraham is one of these game changers because he will establish and explain the difference between all these several gods and polytheistic way of thinking, that anything that you see, the thunderstorms and wind and rain and water and everything, uh, these are not, there is not one God for all these, every of these things. These are different expressions of the same one God. So he establishes that, of course, it's not going to be easy to go down our throats at the time. It's going to take time. It needs to be digested. But it's a game changer. So 1600 BC. Okay. The next important thing that we are listing, of course, we're not listing everything possible because we would be here for years, right? So the next important thing that matters to us here in this study is Moses, about 300 to 400 years after Abraham. So Moses brings the Ten Commandments. So he is the one that's going to address morality in a more effective way, in a more bold way. So he brings a tablet with all the Ten Commandments. And from there, we're going to start being informed by our own consciousness all the time that these things are supposed to be, we're supposed to follow those things. Of course, it has to attach disciplinary laws to that so, the thing works. And he did. But that's not really what we want to study today. We are going through just some of the facts in history. The next important thing we're going to list is about 500 to 600 BC. In Greece, we started having a boost of people interested in putting their heads and their minds on and focus on calculus, math, geometry. That's when, the great basic ideas for what one day is going to be engineering in general, it starts right over here, 600 BC. So it's very important. 33 after Christ himself, right? It's a strange way of saying things. But anyway, 33 AD, Anno Domini, Jesus of Nazareth, no need to talk much about him. Of course, it's a game changer again. 312, Emperor Constantine takes up the power in the Roman Empire. And for historical reasons, actually, it's a very interesting story. Let me tell you in a minute or so. At the time, the empire, the Roman Empire, was divided in two, the Western Empire and the Eastern Empire. And he was the Eastern Emperor, but he wasn't happy enough. He wanted the whole thing. So he declares war against the Western side of the empire, and they go to war. When the day of the war, the day that they stated for the war, they take all the soldiers and everything else, and the day's approaching, and his informers come back to him. That's 1 or 2 days before the day itself. So his informers come back to him and say, we kind of underestimated the enemy. There are many more soldiers than we could ever think of. And I think it's going to be trouble because I don't see how we can win this thing. So that's a couple of days before that. So he kind of, what am I going to do now? So he consults with a bunch of people, and suddenly a small group of people say, well, I'll tell you one thing. There are some people in the empire, these guys that are weird people, right? That's what they used to be seen as. They call themselves Christians. They are always happy, and there's nothing ever goes wrong to them. Everything is good. Everything is happy. They're always talking and laughing and praying. And they all use this cross that symbolizes something that we don't know exactly what it means. But, all of these people with the cross, they're all happy. Everything is always good for them. Nothing ever goes wrong. That's the impression that these people, go to Constantine and tell him. So he is running out of options. So as a last option, last resource, he says, well, I want my soldiers to wear, to have in their casts the drawing of a cross then. And they prepare everything. That's one day before the battle. On the next day, the battle comes. And because of a huge mistake on the strategy from the Western commander, okay, he made a huge mistake, and they lost the battle, and Constantine won the battle, and he attributed, his victory to the cross that their soldiers had. So he converts over, a few years later, he converts over to Christianity, makes and declares Christianity the religion of the empire, and no Christians can ever be persecuted. They cannot never be killed like they had been until then. So that's when, I would say, not how, but when Christians were able to, get their head above the water, and breathe and read their documents and meet in public places instead of catacombs underground. So it was an important thing. It was a really important thing. Next thing, the Maya in about the year 600. I'm adding the Maya here because they bring a different idea, a different method of doing agriculture, never seen before. Agriculture was first made manageable by the Egyptians in 3000 BC or so. But, the arid land of the Egypt is one thing. The rainforest that the Maya were living in is another thing. So everything is very humid, a lot of water. So they established a new system for agriculture, still used today in areas like that. So it was an important discovery, an important intellectual progress, let's put it this way. 622, Islam. Islam comes about. Muhammad was supposed to, and that's, by the way, addressed in the book, On the Way to the Light by Spirit Emmanuel, the role of Muhammad in Islam. So that's well explained in there. I encourage you to actually read that part of the book at least. It's maybe 2 pages or 3. It's very interesting. Okay, so we become a little more geared towards kind of technology, if you will, although it's too early. In the 800s, the clock is born. In the 1100s, one of the biggest moral disasters of humanity, the history of humanity, the Crusades, where those who call themselves Christians went down to Jerusalem to assassinate and kill all the Islamic population, because they thought the Islamic population, obtained the cross where Jesus was actually crucified, and they destroyed the cross. So for that reason, that would be, I would say, a reason enough to go down, gather 60,000 Christians and go down to Jerusalem. I'll tell you, not very Christian at all. 1200, the paper is born, the paper. So now we're going to write in a different format, no more papyrus, no more lambskins, because that's what they used before, paper. 1400, powder. 1450, the Renaissance. The Renaissance is a movement that is going to establish a new connection to arts. Arts were dying. Nobody was paying attention because we were under a tremendous pressure from the church. We're going through the Dark Ages. So the Renaissance is the intent, the general intent is to, have our hearts live something different than oppression by the church. So that was the general idea behind it. 1455, another game changer, printed press. So now from then on, books can be printed as many times as needed with the exact same information, no longer copying by hand from papyrus to papyrus, nothing like this anymore, okay? 1500, compass. By the way, with the advent of the compass, that's how the great navigators of the world, the Portuguese, the Spaniards, that's how they were able to do it, because they had a compass in their vessels. 1600, Galileo and the telescope. He invented the telescope, and he establishes by observation, because you see, before Galileo, what we could do to observe the universe was to look up. That was it. Naked eye, that's it. You look up and what you can see, you can see. What you cannot, you don't, right? So with the advent of the telescope, Galileo was able to track things out in space and establish some statements that came to be truth later. The most important of all being the Earth is not the center of the universe and everything else runs around or orbits around it. No, the sun is the center and all the planets orbit around the sun, Earth being one of them. Okay, 1630, René Descartes, a philosopher. We're going to talk about him a little bit later. A philosopher, mathematician. He established several different things, including the fact that he was the first in the Western civilization to study the pineal gland and make a statement that the pineal gland was the point of connection, if you will, between the body and the soul. Okay? All right, let's continue here. We are in 1630, so let's go further. 1700, the steamer. 1750, the microscope. You see how things are happening. Progress is really starting to pick up now from the 1750s, and up. Progress picks up. The rate of progress picks up. In 1755, we have a new movement called the Age of Enlightenment. The Age of Enlightenment represents the comeback of philosophy in our lives. Philosophy had been killed, if you will, at about the year 140 to 200 by the church, with all the oppression, and the Roman Empire conquered those who were the experts in philosophy, the Greeks, and it became a secondary thing in the empire. With the years, it just disappeared. In 1755, a group of people, probably the leader is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So he tells us exactly this. People, we have to think. We are not thinking. We're just afraid of the church. So we have to question. We have to question everything. By the way, that's what philosophy is, right? Question everything. One of the great philosophers in history was called Allan Kardec. 1800, the battery. You see, we're becoming more technological now. Still, of course, 1800, 18 something, very primitive, but it's changing the course of things. We are more technological now than, say, 200 years before. Okay. 1860, capitalism established to the pattern that it is today. The history of capitalism starts with the Crusades, with the Knights Templar, but that's too far back. So we can't compare that kind of capitalism with the one we have today. So the one we have today, we can say starts more or less in 1860. 1870, anesthesia. 1880, record player. 1882, Thomas Edison, right? Electric bulb. And we continue here. 1885, motor. 1890, electric motor. 1892, the photograph. Those guys would go into a piece of tissue to get the photographs. 1906, airplanes. You see, look at this. 1906, if you go back 100 years, on the same screen that you are, we had barely came up with a battery, and now we are flying already. So 100 years in which we have now electric bulb, we have anesthesia, right? So you see how the pace of progress is picking up. We're getting more done, more accomplished in terms of intellectual progress than ever before. 1910, antibiotic. 1914, World War I, which is not a moral disaster, although there was some technological improvement because they had to build these machines and war tanks and everything. So, motors had to become, electric motors had to be better also. So unfortunately, it's a moral disaster, but there's some technology, some progress, some intellectual progress there. Relativity with Einstein, 1915. Quantum physics triggers, in 1918 with Max Planck. And one interesting thing is quantum physics, without going into too much into it, but it has to do with the structure of the atom. The atom. We didn't know how the atom was until 1935. That's when we discovered the structure of the atom, that we have, a nucleus and electrons and so forth. So quantum physics starts with a blind picture of what an electron, electrons and an atom is. Very interesting. 1930, the orthomolecular medicine. Then let's keep going here. 1940, rockets. 1945, the moral disaster number 2. Okay, maybe number 3, right? If you consider the Crusades. World War II. 1950, computer. 53, the advent of the discovery of the DNA structure. We're going to talk about this, not today, on the next meeting. We're going to dig into this particular point in time in history, okay? But of course, it's an important discovery. 1970, video games. 1980, PC. We don't do it for years. We couldn't do things without a PC anymore. Now it's all tablet and smartphone, but still, a PC still very much used, okay? 1985, MRI, still very much alive in medicine, especially in medicine. 1992, the internet, needless to say anything about it, right? 2000, cell phones, very primitive forms and huge and heavy, but still, technology was born around that time. 2000 also MP3 players, music players like iPods and so. 2000 also CAT scan, cerebral scans that we are now able to see to understand the metabolism of the brain. What happens in the brain, its metabolic activity, what is happening in the brain when people are doing things, okay? 2001, another moral disaster, 9/11. 2002, avial core, which is a totally 100% artificial heart that replaces supposedly 100%, in certain cases, of course, there are limitations, but it replaces 100% a regular human heart. 2007, smartphones. 2010, tablets. 2012, driverless car, right? And I stopped here in 2016 because there are too many things to list, right? 2016, drones, and we see drones everywhere now, and we see drones in almost half of these images in television. It's very easy to use drones now to do filming, and it's just another thing. Of course, it's used for surveys and espionage, but that's another story. All of these things, okay, are related to intellectual progress. All of them. All of them are very important. So we're going to select some of these that I listed here. Abraham, 1600. Moses, 1300. Jesus, 33 AD. Islam, 622. The Renaissance and the Age of Enlightenment. Why are these selected? What do they have in special, right? These are events. Although they are part of history, they are not exactly intellectual progress. They are more linked to the moral progress. But they were in the middle. These things happen in the middle of intellectual progress, as we saw. So what I did is I detached these things that had to do with morality. So these 6 events, they had to do with morality more than technology or intellectual progress. But they are as important as. Now, those are events that have to do with morality in a positive way. Good things, okay? Good things. They are supposed to be all good. All of them came with a good intention. Now let's look at some of these moral events that we showed, but with a negative content. Crusades, WW1, WW2, 9/11. So on the top of your screen, on the green line, we have good morality things, good morality related things, good moral progress, if you will. On the bottom, on the red, we have the reverse, the other way around. Now let's look at this one here, Crusades, right? If you look from outside the box, okay, if you look from outside the box, the Crusades are Christianity gone wrong, right? How come in 1099, or actually 1096 is when it first, gets to be thought of. How come in 1096 a pope, Urban the First? Okay, what is a pope? Okay, a pope is the top representative of Christianity who carries a mission. Okay, his mission is to make sure, first of all followers understand the message of Christ. Is the one who is going to do, using a very modern word, okay, he's going to do marketing across the world for disseminating Christianity. That's his role. Of course, he's not by himself. It's a group of people, but that's his main role. So this person, the Pope, okay, he's supposed to be the direct representative of the message of the Christ, of Jesus. So how come a Pope is able to gather 60,000 people and send them down to Jerusalem to assassinate the Islamic population? What Christianity is in that? I'm sorry, I don't see any. And I don't think you see either. So I usually tell people, for me, personal opinion, the Crusades are Christianity gone wrong. Let's look at another event here on the red line on the bottom of your screen, 9/11. For me, 9/11 is Islam gone wrong. Islam gone wrong. The same way the Crusades were Christianity gone wrong, 9/11 is Islam gone wrong. So you see, even the best of things, okay, like you see here, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, even the best of things, the greatest things, can be transformed by man in the worst things. Jesus never said, never suggested, never thought, never wrote anything about, okay, when you see a lot of people going down to Jerusalem to take the cross where I'm going to be crucified on, just go there and kill them all. This is not written nowhere. The same way that Islam doesn't carry anything about 9/11. Muhammad had a mission. He kind of deviated from his mission. So Islam is born with a different tone that it should be. But still, how come we get to 9/11? You see, when I personally, okay, when I look at these things, I think we need to think about history. We need to, maybe we did not understand history enough to extract the facts and run these facts against our own moral standards for each one of us. Because if I think the Crusades were right, and when somebody takes something that is mine, I'm going to go down and kill them. Listen, I'm signing that off as Urban the First. Right? Why did the Crusades happen? Because that was the psychosphere. And it still is. We still have crusades. Not crusades with people and, swords and stuff. But conceptually, we still have them. Groups of people killing groups of people in name of other people. In the name of God included. So, you see, these things are still around. We have not been able to overcome this yet. So, year after year, we go through the same thing, the same problems. And then we ask ourselves, where is God? God is in our heart, but we have free will. So we can choose, well, let's leave God alone for a minute because I want to do bad things. I want to kill people. I want to, do a lot of destruction. I want to create a lot of trouble. I want to be a bad person. I want everybody to be as bad as I am. So we leave God aside, but it's free will. God is not part of this thing. Like Jesus wasn't part of the Crusades. Never, ever. He never, ever suggested, going towards somebody else with any tone of aggressiveness, let alone kill him. So, I see this as an opportunity for us to read a little bit more. You don't have to invest month and month, but to read basic stuff about the Crusades, the reasons why this was done, what was behind it, what was the outcome, what these people who went down to Jerusalem 6 times, the 6 Crusades, what do they take? What was the benefit? How, why? If we understand these events, same for 9/11 in Islam, if we understand these events, I think we can reposition ourselves in such a way that the Crusades is a lot of people killing a lot of people. But with the same concept, we do the same thing every day or every year or every month or every week. Because we target people for what they did instead of doing the other way. Jesus calls this the other face. Instead of showing the other face, no, we go along with the same bad negative energy and do the same thing, an eye for an eye. So we are living 4,000 years ago. We are living before Moses. Every time we do an eye for an eye, we have still not understood the 10 Commandments. So we are living before the year 1300 BC. So you see, intellectual progress gets challenged because of all of this. We have gadgets, we have good things. We can use, for example, we can use a PC, a personal computer, to do research on the internet. We can use the internet for great things. By the way, the internet was born because scientists were doing studies, similar studies in different parts of this country here, the US. And they said, well, it's getting too complicated to trade information and, print reports and reports and reports on mail and mail them to another faculty and another research center. Let's just integrate our computer networks. Let's just make a web of computers. That's what the internet's born for, research, for good things, for good accomplishments. That's not how it is today, and it doesn't have anything to do with God. It doesn't have to do anything with technology per se. Technology is neutral. How we use the technology is where the problem is. So guys, I wanted to bring this to you today. I wanted to make sure, you and I here have the opportunity to think about this, because it's something that bothers a lot of people, myself included. We should revise our moral standards. We did the Crusades more than 1,000 years ago. Are we still doing the same thing? So we did this 3,000 years ago. Are we still doing the same thing? If we are, we're not. Where's my moral progress? So it needs to be thought through. Okay. All right. So I'm going to bring you now back to the Spirit Trivia. Okay. Remember that Spirit Trivia is our question of the week. So you can go to evolution.spirittrivia.com. There's a new question now that I uploaded during the program here. If you're on a computer, you can take your cell phone, your smartphone, and just use the barcode on the top left of your screen. And just go there, participate with us. Once again, we do not collect any sort of information from you. Nothing at all. It's 100% anonymous. So participate with us, go there and cast your answer, and we'll discuss the answer next week. Thanks for watching Spiritism, A Closer Look Evolution. That was program number 20. You all have a good night.